going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Views from the Gravel Lot podcast presented by Build in Buffalo, your city, your team, your family. I'm your host, Ben. We're back for another episode. Another episode breaking down some of the edge options for the Bills in rounds 1 through 2, and even some options in the third round or closer to the fourth round, depending on a trade back or some other scenarios that may pop up for the Bills. But I have 5 players I'm going to go over today. Last episode, we did a couple different players. That video and podcast will be in the description. So if you guys want to check that out, I broke down a couple other edge rushers, Princely Uman Mellon, Shemar Stewart, just to name a few. There's a long list of guys that the Bills can potentially draft this season. It is a deeper class with some interesting players and archetypes. But today we're going to talk about 2 guys from the same school. Some, like I said, a third round option. We're going to go over some varying skill sets here and kind of break down the edge class the best we can, the best I can today, and put a wrap on that. And we'll move over to defensive tackles and cornerbacks as we kind of go over the positions of need for the Buffalo Bills. But we all kind of know and identified the big 3 as far as cornerback, edge, and defensive tackle. And we'll be finishing with edge rusher today. But I want to start this episode by talking about JT Tuimoloau. I try my best with the name there. But we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each player. We're going to go over some players. I might not be on high on everybody, but we're gonna give our best here and break down these players. We're going to start with JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. 6'4", 265 pounds, 10.5-inch hands, 33 3/4-inch arms, 4.640 yard dash, 4.62, 91st percentile, and he does not have a relative athletic score due to the lack of testing, the agility testing, the broad jump, the 3-cone, all those kind of drills he did not test, and so he doesn't have a complete grade. So we can't really get the full picture, but we have an idea of what kind of athlete JT Tuimoloau is. Production notes: he had 12.5 sacks, 14 hits, 22 hurries, 2 forced fumbles, 22 tackles for loss, 3 pass deflections in 16 games with 667 snaps played in 2024. He did have a lower pass rush win rate, 12.1%, which isn't very good. But what did jump out to me was his run stop percentage, which is 7.8%, which is pretty good. So you kind of get the tail of the tape already just from an advanced metric standpoint. Okay, this is a guy who can defend the run at a high level, and the pass rush consistency doesn't seem to be there. And that's kind of what the story is with him. Did win a national championship with Ohio State. I did think that was worth mentioning. Obviously has a pretty big accolade attached to his name. So we're going to go over the strengths first and kind of get into what he does well. For starters, I had mentioned previously, does have longer arms. He does use that. It does pop up on tape. That is something that he's able to use and win with against tackles. He is a power rusher. He is somebody that's going to beat and win with power. He doesn't really have a ton of speed element to his game, but his power really knocks tackles back. And it's shown on tape. He's got heavy hands, so he's able to punch and really knock these tackles back. And that's something that comes up time and time and time again. But I think the thing he's best at is really in the run game. He sets a really firm edge. He's a really stout run defender. And I think that functional strength plays into both of those things. Like I said, the power profile as a rusher, and then even as a run defender, he has the strength to do a little bit of both. So that functional play strength definitely pops up. And something else I did notice when he was playing, and I mentioned it even in the stats earlier, is he has the uncanny ability to knock passes down. He gets in the lanes with his hands. He's able to disrupt the passing window and do a nice job getting his hands up. Not every edge rusher focuses in on that and as part of their craft. A lot of guys like to focus on their pass rush plan and defending the run, but sometimes those little things add up, and that's something he's good at, and that's something that adds up. And what's made me like him a little bit more and more as I watch him, he's just a very well-rounded player, and he takes the game seriously. Plays with really good gap integrity, so he's not going to overshoot or get caught peeking in the backfield. Like, he does an excellent job of maintaining his leverage and knowing how to attack a gap and stay gap oriented. Something he does well, and I know I talked and I said he doesn't have a ton of finesse. He does have a spin move, And that comes from his background in basketball. He was a dual sport athlete coming out of high school. So he does have a background with that spin move. So that's something that's very evident on tape. He does have a spin move. So that's a nice little added bonus to an already very heavy power rush profile. He does have a high IQ, and that's something you'll see with a lot of Ohio State defenders. These guys play with a good head on their shoulders. They process and diagnose plays quickly. He's no different. He's able to detect screens, runs, misdirection, eye candy, whatever's thrown at him. He really does a nice job staying with it, not getting fooled, and again, maintaining his leverage and knowing how to diagnose runs. And then lastly, as we kind of wrap up his strengths here, he's got a very hot motor. He's going to play. He's going to chase runs down to the end of the whistle. He'll shoot the backside gaps. He'll do everything you need him to do from start of the whistle to the end of the whistle. So there's no compete level or energy level issues. He checks that box certainly. So what does he not do well? If the Bills were going to potentially draft a guy like JT Tuimoloau, well, he is a little bit stiff. So that hip tightness and it limits what he can do around the tackle and around the corner. So obviously, like I said, very power rush profile. He doesn't have that element to his game, so it does make him a little bit more one-dimensional. But he also lacks that first step explosiveness, so he's not going to blow past guys off the ball. He's not super quick off the ball, and that's something you'll see with a teammate of his I'll be discussing shortly. So he's not really going to threaten tackles with speed. He's going to be able to win with power, and that is certainly a very threatening thing at the next level, but I think tackles will have more of an understanding of what he's generally going to do most of the time because he doesn't have that ability and he doesn't have that bend. So when he does try to go around that corner, he drifts upfield and he can't get around that corner and flatten to the quarterback. So that is an issue for him. And as far as his pass rush plan goes, I do think he needs to do a better job of just refining his plan. Having a little bit too much predictability. I know he has his limitations as a pass rusher with the bend and the quickness around the edge and that not being an element, but he does need to do a better job at countering inside, working the inside shoulder, kind of keeping these tackles, guessing because you know what you're good at, but you also have to have that curveball, that changeup that can throw them off, so it's not as predictable. And then I think sometimes against double teams, and again, this is very minor. This is more of a minor concern because he is really good against the run, and that's what is the overall takeaway of anybody that watches him. He does struggle with a little bit of pad level issues against double teams, so he gets blown and displaced when he faces double teams. So that's one thing I did notice. But all in all, he is a very solid player, and he is worth a consideration at least with one of the Bills picks in round 2 because he gives you an instant rotational piece that can be very impactful for your team. You can defend the run well. And we talk about a team that plays with a lighter box and the two high safeties. You're going to need your edge rushers to defend the run well. Look at a guy like Greg Rousseau. Why they drafted him? Because he has the length and the size to defend the run well, even in lighter boxes. A guy like JT Tuimoloau can play opposite him. And I know it's a little bit redundant and you're looking for a different skill set. And that's kind of been what I've harped on all offseason. But at least he can give you that skill set. So it's like you're not getting killed entirely in these lighter boxes anymore. You kind of have two guys off the edge that can play with gap discipline, win with size, win with power, and do a nice job in that way. But I do think, like I said, his pass rush ceiling is a little bit limited, because he doesn't have the bend. He has the hip stiffness. And so I do think you're getting a high floor, low ceiling kind of player, which is sort of something that you'll see with a lot of different prospects in this class, especially at edge. They're kind of all clustered together. Like there's not a huge gap in between these guys. They all kind of do similar things. But I do think he is a guy that plays with a ton of hustle, a ton of energy. That's something the Bills are going to like. The Bills, it's going to pop out to them. So he is somebody that I think could slot in your defense, play with some high compete level, and defend the run well, and give you a little bit of power element and maybe be a guy that gets 6 to 7 sacks a year and defends the run well. So yeah, I like JT Tuimoloau. He's not like that swing for the fences kind of pick, but he's a guy that can come in and be a very solid contributor for your team. And I think that's certainly something you can't write off. And I know everybody wants the superstar home run pick, but these guys exist. And sometimes it's okay to just take the surefire thing. And that's what he is. Let's stay at Ohio State and talk about his teammate, Jack Sawyer, which is a very polarizing player who a lot of people have very mixed feelings on as a potential player for the Bills. He is 6'4", 260 pounds, 9 3/4 inch hands, 31 3/4 inch arm length. So his arm length is a real concern among the draft community and anybody that watches him. I don't think it's a huge concern. Like I think he can overcome it. I don't think it's like this drastic. Like, oh my gosh, he can't be drafted with on day two because of it. No, I don't think it's to that extent. But I do think it's a concern, and it will pop up. Um, who was a five-star recruit. Again, another player that did not qualify for the relative athletic score because he didn't, doesn't have the lack of measure. His lack of measurements didn't test everything, so don't have a complete picture. But this year he really impressed. 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. That was the most in the Big Ten this year. 7 pass deflection, much like we talked about Tuimoloau. Gets his hand in the lane and deflects passes. 9 tackles for loss, 59 total tackles, and he even had an interception. He has the 14th most career sacks in the Big Ten since 2005, when I believe the stat was recorded by Football Reference, College Football Reference. He had 64 pressures, 16 QB hits, and a win rate of 28.4%. He was a national champion in 2024, and again, was also a team captain at Ohio State. So the leadership quality is something that I'm sure the Bills brass and will look for as far as the character. That's a thing that stands out for the Bills. Has been a big selling point to a lot of the Bills draft picks is what kind of person are we getting? Are you getting a leader? Is it going to be a guy that's going to fit into our locker room and fit into our culture? Jack Sawyer checks that box. So I think the match and the connection could certainly be there. Let's talk about what he does well. He is a very good and willing tackler. Even despite his arm length deficiencies, he does a nice job tackling, wrapping up, completing the process without any issues. That's not a concern for me at all. That's a good thing to know. His play strength is very evident, and I think he makes up for it with that lack of arm length with his play strength. He's able to throw blockers back, much like Tuimoloau. He has that natural ability to rock tackles back with his strength. And again, the power is very evident. He has really, really strong, heavy hands. He's able to really use his hands in a multitude of ways. And again, I think you're seeing a little bit of redundancy with Tuimoloau. He sets a strong edge. He's gap-oriented. He does a lot of the little things very well to make up for that sort of average athleticism that he kind of possesses. But he also has very high-end run diagnostics. He read and reacts very consistently. And again, more like the guard movement, the motion, you'll see it doesn't throw him off. He's locked in, and is another player that plays to the whistle with a very, very good and consistent motor. Let's talk about the weaknesses, though, because I think they're important and they need to be discussed if the Bills want to take him in the second round. Obviously, the thing that stands out is the limited athleticism. He is going to be more one-dimensional. He lacks the burst and the get-off. So he doesn't stress tackles really around the edge. His bend is okay. He doesn't really have a ton of qualities that translate to any finesse. So that is important to know. And his pass rush bag isn't super duper deep. He has these moves, he can counter, but it's very inconsistent, it's limited, and he doesn't really string and sequence very well. And again, back to the drum I've been pounding this entire time as I talked about him, the length is a serious concern. At the NFL level, when you're facing better athletes, bigger tackles, and they're able to outreach you, that's going to be an issue for you. So I think it's something he can certainly overcome with good coaching and discipline and playing into his strengths. But it is something that is going to hold him back and limit his ceiling as an edge rusher. I do think he can be a starter. I think he's somebody that needs to refine his pass rush plan and have more counters, have more ability to throw a tackle up with a second move or a third move when the first move stalls out. But he has a lot of good. Like, he plays the game very well. He's another guy like Tuimoloau, 6 to 8 sacks a year, has really good IQ, really good understanding of leverage and technique, and he has the leadership qualities to go with that. So, like, he's a really good guy, really good leader, plays with a ton of hustle and energy, and he's something certainly the Bills can consider there. If you're looking at the board, I think Brandon Beane and this Bills front office will be looking at pick 62 or one of those 2 second-round picks and say, hey, Jack Sawyer's available here. He's a national champion. He's a strong guy, and I know these aren't all the qualities that you certainly want as a Bills fan, but I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if they've taken him. I would want something a little bit different, but again, I have an early third-round grade on him, so I'm not super high on him, but I do think he's going to be a contributor at the NFL level. I think of a guy that he's been compared to a ton is like a guy like Sam Hubbard with the Cincinnati Bengals. Just sort of that solid number 2, number 3 rotational piece that can defend the run, give you 6, 7, 8 sacks, and be a really nice piece for your D line. And it could be a really nice added bonus to your pass rush. All right, let's move on from Ohio State and kind of switch path here as we kind of talk about some different guys. Shemar Stewart is somebody that is very, very interesting. And if you guys want to go back a couple years ago when the Bills drafted Greg Rousseau, this is kind of the similar mold of a player you're looking at. Very raw, but insane off the charts athleticism. And that is the undenying number one thing you're going to think of when you talk about Shemar Stewart. 6'5", 267 pounds, 34-inch arms. He ran a 4.59 40-yard dash. That was 94th percentile. He had a 10-yard split of 1.58. That was an 89th percentile. He's in the 98th percentile in vert, 99th percentile in broad. He was the highest relative athletic score since 1987 out of all qualifying 2012 defensive ends. So the athleticism really jumps out at you. 5-star recruit, number 1 recruit out of Florida, coming out of high school. So why is this guy not being talked about more? What is the thing? Well, we will kind of starting to get into it as we dig a little bit further. You look at his production. He has 4.5 career sacks. He had 1.5 sacks per year. So you're like, whoa, there is really not a ton to look at there. He has the lowest tackles for loss and sack production among every potential first round option. So if you're going factoring 5, 6, 7 guys in the first round potentially, he is by far the lowest in terms of production. Not even close. He was 3rd in run defense grade in 2024 at PFF run defense grade with an 88.2. That is the first thing you will notice. He did get better defending the run this year. And he led the Aggies in hurries with 33, which was probably his most productive stat, which isn't a ton to write home about, but he has some interesting things. And I am very torn on this player, but let's get into all the good stuff, and then we'll talk about the weaknesses and overall fit for the Bills. Like I said, the athleticism is extremely rare. Like, we're entering Myles Garrett territory of athleticism. Like, that's how good of an athlete we're talking about right now. The bend, the flexibility he has at his size, which is very annoying when it comes to scouting him because Texas A&M and Mike Elko love to just bulk their defensive ends up. Even a guy like Nick Scouton, who I was trying to scout and get into, and that's why I didn't even mention this. It's just they had these guys bulk up so much. Like, they weren't playing at more of a natural weight that would suit them a little bit better. Like, that's why he's at 267. He was playing a little bit higher than that. He can play in multiple alignments. He can create havoc from different looks. Like his versatility is very evident. His bull rush, like I know a lot of people talk about the production and people will box score watch this guy. It's going to happen. But his bull rush on tape was stupendous. He was able to throw tackles back like nobody else. Like, he could really create with that bull rush. And he can press his pockets with regularity. He can, and like I said earlier, he's a much improved run defender in 2024. He sets a hard edge. He maintains discipline. And that was the biggest jump in spike and improvement in play for him. And I think that's a big selling point for myself trying to learn about this player is because he is giving you a good run defender. As a starting point, he has the very elite athleticism paired with a really good run defender. So that's a really good starting point. And then we talk about the explosiveness and the twitch he has for his size. It's all evident. And then I think people, at least I saw some clips and reps of him at the Senior Bowl where he was going up against NFL competition and he looked good. He looked the part. Even at the slim down weight, he was very impressive and put up some really nice reps. So what are the concerns? As we haven't talked about him already, the production was not there. And I think that raises concerns like, is this guy going to convert pressures to sacks? Is he going to bring the quarterback down? And that's a big problem the Bills have themselves right now. Like Greg Rousseau struggles with it. He's a very, very talented, athletically gifted, great run defender. It's almost like I'm talking about the same player, but just struggles to consistently put the quarterback on the ground. And he's very good. I'm not nothing to take about Greg Rousseau. I don't want to make this about Greg Rousseau, but um, he has real concerns about that. And then you look at his pass rush plan, he just over relies on his athleticism. I can't blame him. He's a freak athlete, but you need if he's able to develop some sort of nuance to his pass rush plan and have counters inside, and when that initial rush stalls out, he is going to be very, very, very good. Another thing is his pad level. It rises a bit at that height, and that's something I will mention every time we talk about a taller player. When you play higher, it's harder to play with better leverage because you want to get underneath. You want to gain the strength and get the ability to get underneath the tackle's pads. So he can play high a little bit high with his height, and then he loses that leverage. And I just think overall, he just needs a ton of development and coaching. This is not going to be a player that's going to be a regular starter right away. He is going to need time. You're going to need to be patient with him. There's a path to certainly somebody that can be very successful, but if you're willing to be patient, I think it'll be great. But if you're going to rush this guy and force him to do things he's not comfortable doing yet, it could be very bad. Which is good for the Bills, and that's why I talk about this fit for Shemar Stewart and the Bills, because the Bills have this sort of MO where they don't like to rush or push their rookies. They like to let them earn it and like to have these veterans come in and battle it out and have them learn from the sideline. A guy like Shemar Stewart, who you can kind of use in a minimized role as he kind of learns and develops, that could be really good for him because he's got a lot to go. He's got a long way to go. And the fit there is very intriguing with that thought process behind it. So again, very, very high upside, very rare body type and athleticism. And he can probably be a 2-down player for you right away. And I think you look at him and you can probably deploy him with some stunts and some twists and tap into that athleticism and say, hey, go eat for us that way. We'll design production for you. I think he has the potential of a guy that could be an all-pro, but he's just got a long way to go. And so it's hard to really put a number or a grade on that. So he's more boomer bust. He's one of the biggest boomer bust prospects in this class. I give him a late first round grade. I just think of the sheer potential and the athleticism alone, it's worth really considering. For the Bills in the first round, a guy like Shemar Stewart, and I know he's kind of all over the place. I've seen him go as far as 11th to the 49ers. I've seen him drop out of the first round. I don't know what teams are going to view of him. Recency bias will tell you teams are going to fall in love with him. Think of Trayvon Walker coming out. The Jaguars, he's the same thing, just insanely gifted as an athlete. We're just going to draft you and then work with you. And he's a good player. Wasn't better than Nathan Hutchinson, but still a very good player. All right, let's talk about Jordan Burch out of Oregon, a player that is a little bit interesting, a little bit of a tweener, if you will. He's 6'4", 279 pounds, so he's a big dude. 9.5-inch hands, which is the 32nd percentile. He's got 33-inch arms, 38th percentile. He's got a 4.67 40-yard dash. That's 85th percentile, especially when you consider his size. And he had a 1.66 10-yard split. He was a former top 10 national recruit, and he transferred from South Carolina. He does not have a relative athletic score. Again, another player I just can't get the whole picture on. But you look at his college production, 16 career sacks. He had 8.5 sacks in 2024, 11 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. That was all in 2024. He had a 15.7 pass rush win rate. And something I saw on Twitter, it was mentioned by Brett Coleman. He had where he was lined up from a 5-tech or wider when he was basically a true pass rusher, because this is a guy that we're going to talk about. He kicks inside a lot. His win rate would jump to 21.4%, which is good for 10th in the class. So he's shown an ability to win from those wider alignments, and he seems to be more comfortable from that. But that doesn't mean he's going to stop playing inside. So I think when you look at the strength of Jordan Burch, he has some versatility. He can play from 4-eye to a 7 technique. He can play in both a 4-point and a 3-point stance. So having that ability, think of Dwayne Smoot for what he did with the Bills this year, where he kind of played inside and outside, did a little bit of both. That's kind of the same mold of a player you're getting with Jordan Burch, but as a better athlete. His motor is clear. He had multiple cleanup sacks this year. His energy and compete levels passed the test. And another player that's really good at batting passes. He had 6 batted balls in 2024. And then he's also a really pretty sound tackler. His missed tackle rate was less than 12%. So he's able to finish and wrap up and do a nice job there. I'm not super high on him, and there's a couple of reasons why, and we'll get into his weaknesses. The physical tools we talk about. We talk about he's a bigger guy. He has these good measurables. They aren't really there on tape for me. I didn't see explosiveness. I didn't see like a guy that was playing with a ton of size and was overpowering guys. He lacks discipline in the run game. He gets caught peeking. It catches him in bad spots sometimes. His pad level rises when he's in the run game. It leads to leverage limitations. He doesn't use his length the way he should and disengage and keep blockers away from him. He doesn't offer counters or a totally sophisticated plan. So I think there's a long way to go as far as both run and pass. But as you look at the raw athleticism, you're seeing a guy that can play multiple positions, the inside and outside versatility. It's a fun little player, and it's a toolsy player. But I think he needs to find the right spot that can coach him up, work with him on some of these things. So as far as a fit for the Bills, I wouldn't touch him with the first 3 picks. I would wait till round 4, which is I have a late 3rd, early 4th round grade on Jordan Burch. I think he is a very fun, rotationally versatile player. His pad levels and just overall inconsistencies as a run defender and as a pass rusher, it just limits the complete package we're getting right now. But I do think he's good for teams that want to, have some personnel variants that can throw him out there and do some fun things. And I think he has to really improve his run defense to see himself as a future starter. If he wants to be a guy who gets regular game time, he needs to have an ability to defend the run much better. So that's what I think of Jordan Burch. I don't think he's a bad player. I don't think he's a great one. I have a late to 3rd, early 4th round grade on him. He's a very interesting player, an interesting option for the Bills if he happens to fall into the 4th round. I just don't see the fit there early on. And the last player I want to talk about is Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. 6'4", 254 pounds, 9 3/4-inch hands, 34-inch arms, and he ran a 4.73 40-yard dash, which is in the 73rd percentile. He had a 65th percentile 10-yard split. He had an 8.57 relative athletic score, which ranks 288 out of 2012 defensive ends since 1985. He is not like some of the other guys we talked about. He's not a 5-star, wasn't like highly touted coming out of high school. He was a 3-star recruit. He spent 4 seasons with Georgia Tech before transferring to South Carolina. But his production this year was really impressive. He was the first South Carolina Gamecock to win the Nagurski Trophy, very prestigious trophy. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He had 11.5 sacks, 15.5 tackles for loss. In 2024, he was a consensus All-American. And then the tape that really stood out to me was against the elite competition, like Alabama. He had 2 sacks, 7 tackles, and 3 tackles for loss, all against Alabama. He had 10 hurries, 3 forced fumbles, and he was a first-team academic All-American this season. So obviously checks the box off the field for what he's able to bring, and his athleticism and production is certainly there. What does he do well? Well, the first thing that stood out was his explosive first step. He flies off the ball. It's very evident. He's quick off the snap. He is ready to go. And then the length. We talked about his length. Really good length. The usage of length pops up on the tape because I think you'll see a lot of times where edge rushers will have good length, but they don't necessarily use it they have this tool in their disposal and they don't use it. the way they should. Kyle Kennard uses it. He uses his length. He keeps blockers away from him. He disengages it from blocks with his length. Does a nice job using his arms. He can counter inside when this first move is installed. So he does have an inside counter. He's able to work off that first move when it gets stalled. It's a little bit inconsistent, but he does have it. And then watch like a lot of these guys are hustlers in this draft. There's rarely you're going to see a prospect, especially when we're talking about a second or a third round guy, have a lack of motor. He's got a good motor, multiple cleanup sacks, never quits on a play, chases the quarterback down, does a nice job of doing that. And he's another player that has a general understanding of misdirection, screens. He knows where to go. He doesn't get lost. He doesn't get taken out of position. He does a nice job staying sound and not taking himself out of the play. He has good hand timing with his swipes and his chops. His plan has cross chops, strikes, and even ghosts. So he has sort of these moves and this move set that has a couple different nice features to it. And I just think overall he's a very naturally instinctive rusher that knows how to plan and counter against tackles. And using sort of the ability with his explosiveness to counter and do it sort of like a lighter version of Donovan Azaraku, who I have a first round grade on and I talked about in the previous episode. So what are his weaknesses and what are the drawbacks about the Bills potentially drafting him? Well, he is a lighter body type, so that creates an immediate concern in the run game. He can easily get displaced on double teams and bigger and stronger tackles, so that could really take him out and limit his availability to your defense. And I think when we talked about his length, uses it well in the pass rush, doesn't use it very well in the run game. He can't really stack and shed consistently. And I think he also struggles a little bit with pass rush line integrity, something that the Bills killed the Bills in the AFC Championship game where he would drift upfield and he would take himself out of the play. And he, lost contain. Like he struggled with finding the right balance for containment, and it's evident. He needs to improve his pad level. He plays high it sometimes, and that will kill you in the NFL. And that's one of my bigger gripes with a lot of prospects is like pad level is very important. It can be fixed very easily, but it is something that pops up. And I think when we talked about his moveset and the sort of the counters he has, he doesn't use it enough. And that's kind of what I said a little bit earlier with the inconsistencies in his game. He's not able to use it to the extent he really could. If he's more consistent and less predictable as a pass rusher, he could be more multiple. He can keep these tackles guessing, and he could be a real handful for tackles. And then the big thing is he just doesn't really have a ton of power. He not in the run game or the pass game. Like he is not going to be a guy with a ton of strength, a ton of guys that's going to pop you and throw you back. Like he's a finesse guy, and that's perfectly fine. But he doesn't convert speed to power. It's not something that's in his game, not at the moment at least. So power isn't there. And I think he's just got to clean up a lot of things. And these aren't like going to be things that are going to kill his stock. That's why I have a early third round grade on him. I don't have quite a second round grade, but I'm kind of maybe if you push me a little bit more in a couple of weeks, I'll probably give him a late second. But he has the traits, the length, the explosiveness, the get off. It sets the foundation for a very, very good pass rusher. I just think the lack of the strength will eliminate, and the play strength will eliminate him from certain aspects of the game. So where are you going to be able to use him? Is he going to be a designated pass rusher? But I think slotting him in sort of wider alignments, the wide 9, tapping into his burst, his speed, and his length will play into his strengths. And it will allow tackles to have a hard time, even at the NFL level, struggling to handle that kind of get-off. Because his get-off is very apparent. It's very good get-off. He's a baller. He impressed me. I didn't think I was going to come away as impressed with Kyle Kennard, but he had a very impressive background and production, and he's somebody that is sneakily in play for the Bills in the second round, and I wouldn't be against it. I think he's a player that can certainly provide you pop in the pass rush department and give you he definitely brings a very solid foundation as a rusher that can give you some real nice sack production because he he certainly has the foundation in place to be a really solid player. Yeah, that pretty much covers it for today's episode. We went over 5 guys today. We went over 5 guys last week. We're gonna move on to defensive tackles, but edge rusher is a very intriguing class. The Bills need to add something in that department for this draft class and this draft, and it's something I don't think that needs to be forced in round one. You have to look at the board, factor in the board, the cluster of players that are available in second and third round, and bake all that into the equation and kind of give yourself the best possible scenario and options going into the draft. So, what are the Bills going to do at edge? I listed 10 players for you guys. Please check them out. I had a lot of fun doing this. We're going to have more breakdowns. We're going to have guests on next week. Very excited to talk about that. That is going to be fun. So, we will be getting into the cornerbacks of the NFL draft. We'll be getting into some of the options for the Bills, which I think is a more realistic play for the Bills at pick 30. So we'll see what happens with corner, edge, and defensive tackle for the Bills, but certainly all positions that are going to be targeted early on. But again, I thank everybody for tuning in. As always, I appreciate everybody. Spotify, YouTube, wherever you may listen or watch us, please check us out. Links will be in the description. Links to the old show will be in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm your host, Ben, and I'm checking out. Go Bills.